Hello everyone, welcome to my 1cc near no death clear of Metal Slug. Unfortunately I get clipped right at the end, but in this video I was playing it on the FPGA emulation system known as the Mister. This is something I've had for a few months now, ever since my original Musha clear not too long ago. And I wanted to check this out because I think this is basically the closest you're going to get to playing this on original hardware. And while I have played original hardware within the arcade, I think it'd be really cool to check it out on the Mister. So not only will I be commentating on the game itself, my strategies and all that good stuff, but I'll also be talking about how this game performs on the Mister and whether or not I recommend it. One thing I do want to say too is I think Metal Slug has always had kind of a spotty history of its ports. Up until very recently, yesterday, I was thinking that one of the best ports that I liked to play a lot a few years back was the Metal Slug Anthology port on the PS2. Unfortunately, after talking to some people about it on Discord and being reminded of its possible input lag, last night I fired it up on the PS2, and yes, it is actually extremely laggy as far as your inputs, though the hardware slowdown is actually less of an issue. So one thing that I do want to point out when it comes to lag with the Metal Slug games, and basically all games on the MVS neogeo hardware, or AES if it's the home console version, is that they suffer from really bad slowdown induced hardware lag for the most part, because usually, I don't know what it is, I guess the hardware is a little bit underpowered or the graphical detail is just too much for it to handle, especially the Metal Slug games. But actually, as far as the input lag that we normally worry about, on the original hardware, and on the Mister here, it was actually very responsive input lag wise, so that is nice. The problem though, and we'll see that as we get into the further stages, that I normally don't have to deal with when I'm playing this on Shmup Arch, is that because of the hardware induced slowdown being so powerful in certain sections, it will actually eat up your input. And so even though you're pressing the button and you see the bullet coming and you're trying to duck or to jump or to shoot, nothing will happen. The game will not register your input. You're locked in. It's really, really frustrating. I actually lost more than one run to this very phenomenon, because the thing about Metal Slug, okay, talking about the gameplay now, the thing about Metal Slug that's going to help you understand how to clear this game and how to play this game well, and its future iterations, is that it is a very route-based game, and that usually, especially in the later stages, it's important not to die because you need to carry certain amounts of grenades or certain weapon configurations into different sections, and not doing so can make your life really hard, especially when it comes to the slug and the vehicles. Usually the game is kind of balanced around being able to not die only if you have the vehicle or only if you're really, really tightly routed. That's what makes this game a very good quarter muncher, I think, and that makes the game design so compelling and why it's so successful, is it's able to achieve two things at once. It's able to feel fair and feel like the game is giving you your due chance, but it is also sort of put together in a way that has a habit of devouring up all your quarters really, really quickly. I think we all have memories of going to the arcade and spending up to $1 or more trying to clear the game. I remember on the Metal Slug Anthology port, that's how I used to practice this game a lot a few years back. Even though I could emulate, I don't know why I was playing on the Anthology port, to be honest, but I was practicing a lot on that. Oh, because it was on the PSP and a handheld, and I used to play it on the PSP all the time. Anyway, it has this setting in it where you can choose how many lives or how many continues, and it maxes out at either 20 or 10. So I made a rule that I could only beat the game with 10 continues. Looking back on that now, it's really funny. But this game, that's what I'm getting at, is this game, if you don't know the routing, if you don't know kind of the overall strategy of the entire stage, not just individual sections, you're going to have a lot more trouble. So not too much to comment on these first two stages. It's, especially in Metal Slug 1, it's all about the slug. It lives up to its name. And so a lot of these fights, even the second fight here, if you don't have the slug, it's actually pretty scary because there's just certain patterns and stuff that might get you. I've really found that the idea here is you stock up on cannon, you stock up on bombs, maybe I should make some comments real quick on the strategy of piloting the slug, because that's actually super important. So a lot of people express frustration with this game because piloting the slug is a little bit tricky at first, but once you get used to it, it actually is really, really fun to play and fairly intuitive, though there is some weird choices with the controls that I almost feel like are meant to trap the player more than help the player, but I'll get to that in a second. So the way it works is you can actually free aim the slug with a kind of like rolling gunner, where if you move forward, the gun moves forward, you move back, the gun moves back. And so you have to coordinate together your movement and your aiming so that you're not dealing with that too much. Another thing that you need to do with Metal Slug is you need to understand how the ducking mechanic works with the slug, because that's actually super important, because those really come into play in the later stages. So the Metal Slug, even though it's a tank, can actually duck, and its duck is actually pretty good considering how huge its hitbox normally is. It'll get under stuff if it ducks. So ducking with the Metal Slug is a really good idea, and I'll show you some cheesy strats with that as we go. But when you duck, your controls change a little bit too. So normally if you press the grenade or fire or bomb button, whatever you want to call it, when you're on foot, you'll throw this, kind of grenade looking, old school grenade looking thing. But with the Metal Slug, you'll shoot the cannon. And when you pick up power up items, ammo items with the cannon, when you're in the Metal Slug, you'll gain your cannon. However, you can also access those very same grenades with the Metal Slug if you crouch and bomb. So if you're standing and bombing, you'll shoot the cannon. If you crouch and bomb, you'll throw the grenades. That's absolutely important to understand for the routing, because that comes into play a lot, and it's a big factor in piloting that Metal Slug correctly. Another thing you can do with the slug that's also extremely important is when you crouch and jump, you will eject out of the slug. The thing about that is it gives you a ton of invulnerability when you do that, and that's why it's so useful. Oh, let me comment on this mid boss fight here. So this mid boss was one of the main choke points for a long time, of like where I die a lot. And I've seen various strategies on how to handle this guy. This is how I do it. Basically, the idea is you want to stay above him, and you want to stay in these safe zones to the top left and top right. And it's kind of a dance you do where he'll actually rarely jump up there after you. He'll usually run from side to side, and you just jump and shoot down at him, staying above him at all times. And then if he jumps up on there, you can actually do this strategy where you jump and knife his back. So basically you jump upward and you knife, but you make sure you land behind him every time, and you just keep doing that, and you'll take him out fairly consistency. He's got some jankness to him where every now and then he'll clip me or get me, but in these last few runs I started to hone in. You'll notice the chat on the sides. That's because I actually streamed this live on my YouTube channel, which was a lot of fun, and it was, I think, my first major grind on my YouTube stream, because usually I'll grind for hours on my Twitch stream, but the YouTube stream I try to make it a little bit more content focused, and I figured, oh, I'll get the 1cc in a try or two, since I am pretty experienced with the game. But the problem was that I'm usually playing it on RetroArch or ShmupArch with the slowdown reduced, and having the hardware level slowdown that you get on the Mister actually is way harder than playing with the hardware slowdown reduced, which seems backwards, because normally having hardware induced slowdown makes the game easier for the most part. But with Metal Slug, the big issue I was saying is that it'll eat your inputs while it's doing that. So with certain boss fights and stuff, it's really, really scary. And I actually had to get a little bit creative with my auto fire settings, where I had to sort of change my auto fire rate in the later stages. That was less bullets coming out at once, but I think it was more reliable with the with that issue of your inputs getting eaten. You'll see that a lot coming up in the final two stages. So anyway, here's going back to the Metal Slug talk. So coordinating your cannon and your shot can be really, really powerful. And then look, you're crouching, throwing their grenades. The grenades, the trade-off is the cannon has more power per shot, it feels like. I don't know the data on that, but it definitely seems like the cannon puts out more damage. But the trade-off is that it takes longer to fire, has more of a cooldown. So you actually can usually kill things faster by just spamming them with tons of grenades. which you saw me do there. Another thing you can do in that fight is if he gets too far to the left, you can hop out of it. And if you hear some like background talking, that's actually me talking as I play live, so don't mind that too much. So the big trick here is that you want to get the slug, and the way you do that is not destroy that danger barrel. It's kind of a little bit of a tease because normally you destroy those on sight, but that one you don't want to do because you want to get a hold of the barrel. Another interesting thing about the later stages is that there will be guys who try and jump on your slug, and if they climb up in there, they'll actually kill you and blow up the slug. So it's actually pretty concerning that they don't do that. There's different ways to do that. One is you can spin your cannon around a bunch, and that will sort of kill them or throw them off. Another one is you can wiggle back and forth at a certain rate, and it'll throw them off. So that's probably the best strategy, but I have a tendency to spin the gun. The funny thing about these guys here is they have really strong armor for your shots, but one cannon blast will take them out. So this is one of the big rush sections. So some level design in Metal Slug is actually kind of harder if you try and take it slow and steady. Sometimes it's best known when to rush the level design, and this is one of the sections where just rushing the level really works out. You just time your cannon shots, hold forward, and keep holding forward. I get clipped there. If I had done it just right, I wouldn't have gotten clipped. Here's a really good strategy on this boss fight. You duck, and you just hammer him with grenades. So make sure to route yourself for having grenades there. And since you're ducking, like I said, the Metal Slug's duck animation is actually pretty good. You'll just duck under its shots, and then what you do here is you coordinate together your cannon to clip the missiles coming out while blasting him with the shot. The bottom tank is a pain if you don't have a slug. It is a real pain. So you can take them out on foot, but it's much more tricky because not only are they plowing you with bullets and those things, but they actually can run you over. And so you have to kind of run around them and stuff. It's a real pain. But if you just do that strat with the Metal Slug, you'll be completely fine. I think Mission 4 is actually much easier than Mission 3 or Mission 5. It's kind of a quick little lull if you know how to route it. So these guys here are a real problem. The guys up on those balconies, those are the ones you need to worry about. Also, just a general hint for Metal Slug city stages, always kill the cars, always take out the cars. Because the way the game design just loves to do, and this seems to carry across Metal Slugs, is they love to put little booby traps on top of the cars. Like that one right there, if you run up on top of it, that guy will shoot you. They're just always little traps. So instead of running on top of the cars, always destroy them. The exception being, of course, if you're in a slug, then sometimes you can rush the stage. But that's always my advice, is just taking out the cars usually tends to be the correct strategy. The flamethrower. The flamethrower is probably the worst weapon in the game, that or the shotgun. It's kind of debatable. It definitely does the least damage. It has a really cool animation, though, but it has more range than the shotgun. I'm always debating which one is better, which one is worse. So I want to talk a little bit about Metal Slug scoring. Basically, the way scoring works in Metal Slug is it's all about milking the enemies, and unfortunately it's not very well designed, where if you look at world record score runs or whatever, it's just basically an hour and 40 minutes of milking sections over and over. This game is not a good scoring game by any means. It's kind of impressive to see someone optimize the milking and stuff, but think of this game scoring like Esperade on crack. It's just out of control. I hopped out of that to grab the grenades because, like I was mentioning earlier, grabbing grenades on foot is definitely useful in a lot of sections rather than having 30 cannon, which normally you can't use 30 cannon shots unless you just spam it just because it's so slow, but you can definitely battle through. Look at this, the grenades. That's the strat on that. You can do some kind of shenanigans where you jump in and out of the slug too, but really just rush it and grenade it is much more reliable, I feel like, and much safer. So here we go into the next section, and I actually had to change my strategy for this boss because of the hardware. So normally what I'll do is, and this is where you can abuse the jumping out of the slug, One note on jumping out of the slug that I think is very important to mention is you get a ton of invulnerability coming out of it, like you see, but you actually barely get any jumping into it. So just remember that, especially with the boss fights, that your slug will likely take hits if you jump into it near a bomb because you don't get much invulnerability. But anyway, what I normally do is you see this flamethrower on the bottom. Usually you blow up the flamethrower with your shot, and then you get underneath it and blast the underside. I did that one run, but the problem is that, again, if you're playing on Shmup Arch, Retro Arch, something like that, it's totally fine. But on the original hardware or on the Mister, it causes so much slowdown because a bunch of enemies spawn out of it when you blow that bottom flamethrower off. It causes so much slowdown that your inputs cannot come out. And so I was, even with auto fire, so I was just sitting under there, and I was holding auto fire, I was pressing bombs, I was doing everything. Nothing was coming out of my metal slug, and so I ended up dying because of that. So that's kind of one of those weird sections where it's better just to leave the thing alive and then to kill it just blasting the top instead of taking out the flamethrower. So this section here is pretty tricky. You just have to do some careful routing, rush it. There's a shotgun, not worth it. Flamethrower, not worth it, because you need the range of your pistol. So it's better just to stay with the pistol. Now, if there was a heavy machine gun, that'd be a different story. But anyway, maybe I should make my little tier list of weapons. The best, I think the highest tier weapon is the heavy machine gun. And then after that, probably the flamethrower and then the shotgun. But the heavy machine gun is definitely the best. In some sections, though, the pistol is actually better than the flamethrower or the shotgun, like this section here, because you need the range. So I accidentally triggered those guys to spawn. If you go to the top, you'll trigger more enemies, so it's advisable you stay to the bottom. The bridge is the hardest section of the game, for sure. This is the hardest survival section of the entire game. Minus maybe the last boss fight or something like that, but yeah. So making through this section without dying, I was really proud of that, because it's kind of got a lot of randomness to it. And then on the hardware, I was having a lot of trouble because, again, with certain sections where a lot of enemies were spawning and stuff, it was just eating my inputs up. So my strategy here is I kind of inch the screen. That's what I call it, where you inch and you kind of take things out on the very sides of the screens. That seems to be really effective. Otherwise, you get completely bullied. But the way it works is there's certain sections where it'll spawn them a little bit at a time, and then certain sections where it just spawns them all at once, like right here. So the idea here is you take those guys out on the left, then you really hunker down right here and just blast this guy with the shotgun. The scary part is that I actually made a mistake there, but it unbelievably worked out. The mistake was I was too far away from that tank. What I should have done is inch closer to the tank so I didn't have to jump over the shot. But I just realized, oh, I'm too far away. So I jumped over it, bounced off the top, managed to just bounce around and avoid those bombs. But that's definitely not the safe way to do that. The safe way would have been to sneak closer to the tank. The scary part about those black tanks, though, is they'll just run you over if you're not careful. But I was feeling really good right here. I had 3 or 4 runs the night where I made it to the final boss and died on the final boss, so we still weren't out of the woods. Lives don't have a whole lot of meaning, honestly. They're nice, but you can chain die in this game on the boss fights very easily, so especially the final boss. I think it's kind of designed to make sure you do that. So it's all about having the resources and having the tank. Because in this section here, if you do this section correctly, you can really build up a ton of bombs and stuff, and that's what you want. So right now we got to really route for the final boss here. And I can't remember, I think I routed correctly. So some of those you got to dodge and duck under, but if you just kind of come over here, find a nice little safe spot. Don't shoot those guys too early because they're actually extremely valuable. They're the ones that give you the bombs for the boss. That's really important. Another important thing here is bomb right there. I actually lost the run because your shots won't hit them for a while, but they'll throw this dangerous rocket thing at you. So the best way to handle that is just to throw some grenades right when they spawn on screen. So right now it's very critical that my slug does not get hit. We want max slug health coming into fight, the final boss fight. This section here you just duck and jump. I don't even think you need to duck. And then this next bit of planes, they're a bit of a trap where they want you to jump, but don't. You just sit there and shoot upward. The bombs won't hit you if you just hold still. But the game's trying to psych you into jumping. Again here, picking up the cannon, and I think this guy has a heavy machine gun. One thing I can't remember is I can't remember if you hold your weapons or not if you pick them up in the slug. I think you do, but sometimes I forget whether or not that. Though I forget the way that works a little bit. But yeah, I think the safer idea was to get out of the slug and pick up the heavy machine gun, but that's fine. So those guys are pretty easy to take out if you know they're there. Otherwise, they'll jump up and throw missiles at you, which is really bad. This section here is tricky, and I needed to kind of refine my way of doing it, but I hadn't played in a while, so I sort of forgot a little bit how to do it. But what you have to do is you have to take out this chopper, and you can't really do it in the slug without taking damage. Like, so the way I should have just killed him completely on foot, because I took a hit in the slug, and that's not good. This part sucks. I can't believe I made it through. Making those jumps. Okay, got those bombs. That's critical. And then here we go. We're coming into the final boss fight. So the strategy for the final boss is actually pretty simple. It's just a matter of managing the RNG and the execution of it. But I'll show you how to do it. So the first thing is, you want to wait until you start damaging him with your machine gun, and then you completely blast him with bombs. That was incorrect. I kind of got a little overexcited and lost track of what I'm supposed to do. Oh, really clean jump out there, because I would have gotten hit by those. So okay, here's the strategy. You jump up on this sort of ladder right here, and there's a certain spot right here, kind of on the slope of the ladder, where he has a real hard time hitting you, and you can lay down suppressive fire with your machine gun. And then when he shoots out those right here, the homing missiles, you launch your cannon, and your cannon's blast will hopefully shield those. Sometimes, especially the further on it gets, they'll get through it, and you have to like eject or take the hit, depends. This part there, you just jump out, no problem. That's actually a super easy pattern for him to dodge with the slug. So you want him to do this as much as possible, because it's a really easy pattern to dodge. What you don't want is him to do a bunch of homing missiles like this. So here we go. Fire the cannon. Homing missile. Very nice. Throwing those grenades. See, I knew at this point, okay, I'm almost certainly locked into the 1cc now, because I think I could grenade spam him on respawn and probably kill him, if not once, then twice. But you never know. This guy has a ton of HP, so you never want to be too arrogant about that sort of thing. See how much invulnerability you get coming out. Honestly, I can't believe I didn't get the no death clear, because look at how much damage I'm laying on this guy. And that's where the death came. Okay. Clipped, because I didn't see that thing down there.
Yes, got it.
And there we go. After a 4-hour grind, or about 3-hour and 45-minute grind, got the 1cc so close to a no death clear. I'll probably do a no death clear. While we go into the credit section here, I want to give my sort of final thoughts on the Metal Slug ports and how to play this game. So it was really fun playing it on the Mister, and I feel like if you want the closest experience to playing on the original hardware, definitely play on the Mister. However, I feel like this is one of the situations where the original hardware isn't actually the best option to play the game. I really do think, and you'll see with my next Metal Slug run, which will be Metal Slug 2, that the best way to play these games is to play them in Shmup Arch with 3 frames of run ahead and CPU set to 200%. I'll make a video on how to set this up on the next one, because it's just so much more enjoyable. You can actually dodge stuff and react stuff, and your inputs don't get eaten up. And so yeah, shout outs to everyone who tuned in for the live stream. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, so while this is playing out, let me thank my patrons. So thank you to Dingo, Andy Capt, Anthony A, Ben Win, Borgie22, Corio, Disco Stas, Leia, Dominic NG, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, House Sue, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, Gameboy Guru, K Malaise, Mark Toms, Martin Worrell, Maz, Meher Calendrian, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Ram Q, Raul, Smacky Factor, Sugumo, Plasmo, TRM, Utakaya. Thanks for watching.
Okay. Let's do a fun little, before I close the stream, let's do a... Finn. Unite. Peace forever until the next 7 games. Ape got destroyed.